We'll be recording the session, so you all know, so that we can post it for those moderators who weren't able to make it. So thanks for stopping by today. I'm Zachary Idala. I'm the Vice President of NRHC, and we're really excited to see you all in person just over a week. So thank you all for agreeing to serve as moderators for a session, the conference. It's really a wonderful thing to be able to call on our members to do this kind of stuff. Just by a show of hands, how many of you are first-time NRHC attendees? All right, number of. How many of you have never moderated a panel before at a conference, NHC or elsewhere? Oh, good. So we have a number of first timers. Okay, great. So what I wanted to do today, what we wanted to do is go through what the moderating process looks like. For those of you that have done it before, it's probably fairly similar to what you've seen in the past. But for those of you that haven't, the purpose of a moderator and in a session, whether it's an academic panel talk or a roundtable or one of the art galleries, facilitate the session. Your job as a moderator is to make sure that everyone who is speaking gets the appropriate amount of time, make sure that the transition from one person to the next is smooth, make sure that before the starts, all presentations are loaded onto the computer, all of that kind of stuff. Your job as a moderator is to facilitate so that everything that needs to get done in that session gets done. And to also facilitate discussion and take question, facilitate the question and answer period of the presentations as well. And there's a little bit of a difference between what roundtable discussions, what roundtable presentations look like versus panel talks and the arts gallery talks. Sort of take both of those in turn. But what you should have received from the NRHC Gmail is not only the email thanking you for moderating, but you should have gotten in there the link to the moderator schedule there to you right now. And so I would just encourage you between now and March 30th to find where you are slotted to moderate. And this is what it looked like, the link. We still need one session to be taken. If you or anyone you know, perhaps a student of yours, if you are an honors director, or a friend of yours, if you are would like to encourage them to volunteer to take that on, please ask them to read out. It will be 3 presentations on April 1st. Missing that one, but everyone else should see their name. If you just do a quick search or scroll down, it's not that many, you should be able to find where you are on the presentation schedule. Make sure that you have no conflicts. We want this should be finalized at this point. So if you see a conflict in terms of what other obligations you have at the conference and where you're scheduled to moderate, please as soon as possible. Okay. If at any time people have any questions, just go ahead and either interrupt me or ask a question in the chat. Okay. Let's take a look at the. Okay. So for academic panel talks and art gallery sessions in the program, there is for each session and each place in the program, there's going to be the list of the presenters for that. So make sure that when you are moderating the session, we want to keep to the order of the presenters in the program, unless there are extenuating circumstances. For example, if there's a no-show presenter, or one of the presenters has technical difficulties, their presentation won't load or something like that. Want to try to stick to the schedule in the program, because a lot of times people are moving from the honors directors, the faculty that are there for the school. They might be, person A is the first presenter in their session, and then person 2 in another session is the last one, so trying to get from point A to point B. We want to try to adhere to that as much as possible. so that there's no confusion about when people are. Keep that in mind as you go through the moderating and start presenting your particular session. For the most part, there are only three. There are going to be 3 to 4 presenters in any session, but there are definitely presentations with more than one co-author, and so there'll be multiple presenters, and maybe a multiple board. Each presentation gets the same amount of time, regardless of how many are on the talk, right? And so what you want to do when you get to your moderating session is, in that in-between time, invite the presenters to come up to the lectern so that they can load their presentations onto the computer to make the transition as seamless as possible. Computers are Chromebooks. All the presenters will know this, or they should know this. But as a moderator, make sure that they're aware of that. And if their presentation is not formatted for Google Slides or formatted as a PDF, that time to convert it so that everyone's presentation is loaded onto the computer and ready to go as you move from presenter to presenter. This would also be a great time to make sure that you confirm any name pronunciations, or just make sure you do that as well. Basically, your job is to introduce the presenter one at a time, introduce their topic or the title of their talk, them the floor, and usually, as their time comes up, a minute warning, 1 minute warning, or whatever, for the amount of time that you've allotted them for this. You're going to want to have a stopwatch either on your watch or cell phones, time as closely as possible. It's really up to you as the moderator to decide how you want to divide the whole session up. Sessions are in 75-minute increments. So what you can do is you can divide the whole session evenly for your presenters, and then dedicate 5 minutes at the end of each talk for discussion. Or you can do all of the presentations at once with no time for questions, and then save the last full 15 minutes of the presentation session for Q&A for all the presenters. Or you can do a sort of combination of both, where you do 1 or 2 questions at the end of one presentation, as the next presenter gets ready and transition over, and then say whatever a lot of times questions at the very end. It's really up to you how you do it. Typically, I like to take this third option here, is take 1 or 2 questions in the transition from one speaker to the next, and cut it off so that I make everyone gets an equal amount of time to present. That's really the most important thing. Everyone gets the same amount of time to present. We don't want to have a situation where we've run out of time and the last presenters don't have the same amount of time to present their work, or the same amount of time to field questions. So we want to make sure that everyone has the same for all of these things. For art gallery, you might find if you're doing an art gallery presentation, it might be a little more fluid, as befits the nature of artistry. But again, it's your job to ensure that all the presenters are there, right? We don't anticipate any major audio-visual technical problems, but there will be a phone in your room if you need to call out. And they will send somebody as soon as possible. If in the event that happens, try to ask the presenter if it's necessary that they use the computer to do their talk. I know a lot of people are going to have slides, but for other formats, maybe they can go without, but they probably won't. And if they can't, then it would be an appropriate time to just move on to the next while for AV to taken care of. You'll start the session, announce the topic, how you're going to structure the session, right? It'll be your job as the moderator to on people who have questions, try to make sure that people don't get an opportunity to ask multiple questions if there are other people to ask. So people can ask more than one question, but not before everyone else who wants to ask a question has been able to ask one, right? If you find you're in a room where there's not a lot of discussion or there aren't a lot of questions, feel free to suggest a comment or a question in that session to sort of get the general discussion moving. But your job as a moderator is less to be an active participant in the session, but rather to facilitate the moving along of the session itself. So feel free to chime in if there's a lull in the conversation, but you're not expected to move along. Okay. Once all the presenters have gone and questions have been taken, it would be your job to announce the end of the session, thank everyone for coming, ask for a round of applause for all the presenters who have presented, and you'll be given a folder with certificates.
That's actually a little, that's not true. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in.
No, I knew that.
Yeah, so this year we're going to give all of the presenters their certificates upon check-in at registration. So that won't be something that you have to handle. But one of the things that will be in the room, we're going to print out a hard copy of kind of the program to put into the room, and that's going to be that room's copy. So when you walk into, let's say, Brighton number 1, there will be a Brighton number 1 program. So you can flip and you'll see the order of the presenters. And then what we would just ask to, and I don't know if Zach said this, I'm kind of looking at some other stuff, as multitasking as it were. But we would just ask that if anybody no-shows, just to note that in that hard copy in your room, just so we have a sense, because we have had a lot of cancellations. About 10% of presenters that were accepted have already canceled their presentations for this conference year, which is more than normal. But sometimes we always see, people that don't show up or whatever else. We would like to kind of track that data just to kind of see what it's like the day of. But yeah, so the presenter certificates we're taking care of at registration. Just keep track of who comes into your room. And there will be a hard copy in there. And one of the other things that we always get complaints about post-conference is if we don't go in the order of the presentations, because if a director has multiple students presenting in a session, sometimes they try and start here because there's somebody in the first slot and then they have somebody in like the last slot in another room. And if it goes out of order and they miss them, they get a little upset, and I understand that completely. So if we can go through the presentation order, of course, if somebody's not there, that's something different. But yeah. So that's all from me. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I knew that, and I was just going on autopilot for the. Yeah, we'll change the moderator instructions so that can bring it. But definitely do keep. I did not mention that, and make sure that you do. Because we want to keep track of those things. The last thing I wanted to show, for those of you that are doing roundtable discussions, they're a little bit less structured, in the sense that you're really only there to have people switch from table to table. Once again, for the roundtable discussions, you'll do the same thing. You'll have your timekeeping device, getting the session started by announcing the topics and the time allotments. For those of you that don't know, the roundtable discussion sessions are basically going to be a series of roundtables where presenters, each presenter is seated at a roundtable, and people gather at whichever roundtable they would like to be a part of, discussion they'd like to be a part of, and those will last 30 minutes each. And then after 30 minutes, your job as the moderator is to announce that time is up and invite people to switch tables. And then you'll do a second round of 30 minutes and then use the final 15 minutes for people to generally discuss what happened or what they talked about in their roundtable discussion. Once again, your job is to facilitate that. Any question, if people don't have questions, you can ask a question, but generally you're there to participate. There to facilitate rather than participate, but you should feel free to sit down at one of the roundtables so that you get a sense of the kinds that are being discussed, so that if you need to participate or want to be involved in the discussion, you're free to do that. And once again, at the end, you would, thank everyone for coming in. That is the long and short of the major stuff. Amy, your question, are there roundtables with more than 2 tables? Yes. Yes, so you want, so not, so there, some of the round tables will have more than 2 tables in them. And so audience members will have to choose which 2 to attend. And they should, that's sort of, that's not your job to decide. That's their job to have read the schedule, which may be too much to ask for some people, but it's their job to sort of know which tables they want to sit at from the beginning. But what you can do as a moderator is just introduce all the different tables right at the beginning of the session, which you should. I'm sorry.
And one of the things that we'll have in those rooms, in the roundtable rooms, so one of the things for moderators in roundtable rooms is we will have placards, like, folded pieces of paper that you can put to designate who gets what table. So that'll also help people know which table is which. But sometimes what we do at the end, that last 15 minutes of the session, is we have the presenters at each table kind of stand up and debrief. So like, 2 or 3 minutes debrief. So if you couldn't get to a table, you can still kind of hear a very short Reader's Digest summary of like, what was your presentation about? So that's another way of kind of handling the roundtables. A 30 minutes, call a switch, 30 minutes, and then quick debrief at the end. So.
Marissa, I see your question. Will you have enough time to get to your own session if you're moderating before? Yes, there's 10 minutes in between each session. So
and everything's on one floor.
And everything's on one floor. So it shouldn't take you too long to get from point A to point B. So that should not be an issue. Okay.
And if you're ever in a session where a moderator no-shows, if you could help us out, that would be awesome.
Yeah, feel free to step in for sure. Let's see, mention the email. We have a list for everyone presenting for a session. We could not find anything pertaining to this list. Do you know when we will be informed about number of presenters? That's in the program. The draft program, is that posted yet?
Yeah, so it's posted. It's on the website. It's on the website. There will be a final draft coming out in the next couple of days. But Devin, I actually sent you an email earlier this morning because there's 6 of our fabulous moderators have the lovely job of moderating hybrid sessions because we have 6 virtual presenters that we've built in to the program. So Devin is one of those folks. Matt Barron is one of those folks. I'm one of those folks. Marcella is one of those folks. And then the other 2 people are not here right now. And yes, I have basically the entire conference program memorized at this point. So if you have a question, just let me know. But Devin, if you take a look at your email, I could talk to you off this Zoom since the hybrid sessions kind of don't apply to the majority of our moderators. And same thing, Matt, if you want to stick around for a few minutes after, we can talk.
Yeah, I did actually see that email, so thank you.
Okay, perfect. So you have 4 people in your session that you're moderating. Yeah.
Once again, each room that has presentations in it will have the schedule for that room. So even if you can't find it right now, once you walk in, you can right on. Any other questions about moderating process, role of being a moderator, general NRHC conference? Are we excited for the conference? Yeah. All right, well, if there's no other questions, that's all I had. Is there anything I forgot to mention, Kat, or Amy, or Marcella, or anyone else?
No, I think you covered it. And like, if anybody does have questions or anything, just email the Northeast Regional Honors Council Gmail, and either I'll field that or I'll pass it along to Zach and he'll field it. But we really appreciate your service. It really helps to have great moderators to help make the session memorable for the students who are presenting. I think that's kind of our entire mission, to kind of elevate the student experience in honors. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you.